Solomon.
My name is Mohammed Abul Kalam.
I'm Shalina Zahrajan Mohammed.
My name is Neil Payne, aka Mohammed Payne.
I'm a Mohammed. So what?
British Muslims have become more visible. They are hot topics in our newspapers and on our television screens. Stories about Muslims sell.
For some reason, if you're a Muslim, everybody expects you to be an expert on terrorism.
People assume that because I'm a Muslim, I'm less British than others. That's absolutely untrue.
There's a lazy assumption amongst some that Muslims fit a narrow set of negative stereotypes.
He's called Mohammed, but he's white. He's white.
But what's the reality? Who are Britain's Muslims? Why do they believe in Islam? And what's it like being a Muslim here?
Islam doesn't tell you when you become a Muslim you have to be an Arab or a Malaysian or a Pakistani or Moroccan or anything else. There is really no such thing as a Muslim. There's lots of Muslims.
These terminologies, i.e. extremist, fundamentalist and moderate, these terminologies have been given by the British government on the Muslims to disunite the Muslims.
There's far too many people living their lives un-Islamically, un-Muslim-like, and that's giving a misrepresentation of our faith.
The name Mohammed is already the most popular boy's name in some parts of the UK. We'll be meeting 9 British Mohammeds, including converts, a feminist, mainstream Muslims, and what some would call a Muslim with extreme views. These are the stories of just some of Britain's 2.4 million Muslims. They might share the same name, but not all share the same journey to Islam. There are almost as many roads to faith as there are Mohammeds. London-born Shalina Jan Mohammed is a 35-year-old blogger and author of chick-lit novel Love in a Headscarf.
I'm very proud of being a British Muslim woman. I'm really proud of the fact that I can practice my faith to the absolute fullest in this country.
9/11 woke me up. It felt like I was born again as a true Muslim. So I went out striving for Islam.
Radical preacher Mohammed Shah Jahan is a 25-year-old father of 1 from Stoke-on-Trent. Originally from Bangladesh, 29-year-old East Ender Abul Kalam was given the name Mohammed when he was 19.
It was really difficult for me because I was into drink and I was into recreational drugs.
Neil Payne is 34 from Croydon. A lapsed atheist, he's been called Mohammed now for 10 years. Islam Channel boss Mohammed Ali Harath claimed political asylum in the UK. He is a wanted man by his home country, Tunisia. 39-year-old pilot Mohammed Hassan was born in Kenya to a Pakistani father and an Indian mother. Mohammed Foles is a 47-year-old prison imam from Gloucester.
Up to the age of 40, I was known as Martin. And then at the age of 40, a dramatic change in my whole life, which I didn't expect.
Ruhel Mohammed is a 27-year-old Bengali Muslim who works in London as a graphic designer.
I used to be a black skinhead with a group of white neo-Nazis.
Former skinhead Andrew was given the name Mohammed Solomon when he became a Muslim.
I remember with much embarrassment and shame, didn't really have a lot of respect for Pakistanis. So if anyone had said to me at that time, you're actually going to end up, sitting down with them and being the religion of these people who I really didn't really like, I would have thought you're totally insane.
But a series of encounters radically changed his life.
When I was 17, I decided to go to Canada to see my father, who I hadn't seen since I was 3. And he had a profound effect on me because he was very disciplined, very intelligent man. And I remember he said to me, on your return to England, he said there's two things that you need to consider if you want to be a man. One is either become a Muslim, or the second is to join the army. So on my return to England, I met a bloke, as it were, down the road, and he said to me, "Are you interested in learning about Islam?" And that was it, really. I became Muslim in 1984. That was a time of mass unemployment, Thatcherite years, rise of the BNP. I thought, as black people, we could all unite around one religion, which was Islam, and it could help us to deal with some of the issues, the social ills, the moral ills that was affecting the community.
Writer Shalina was raised as a Muslim. Her surname, Jan Muhammad, means someone who loves Muhammad.
I've always thought of the Prophet, and it's a really difficult word to say in this environment, as a radical, as somebody who came with some really incredible ideas. He said that whatever race you were from, whatever background, rich or poor, slave or free, and of course man or woman, what was radical about him is he said that all those people were equal. This was an idea that completely changed the social fabric of the time he lived in. It meant that slaves could become free. It meant that somebody who was from a black tribe was equal to somebody who was from an Arab tribe. And it just seems to me that even 1400 years later, those ideas are so powerful and so much in need.
Former atheist Neil Payne is one of a growing number of Britons who have converted to Islam.
I had a girlfriend, used to like bacon sandwiches, used to like going out dancing a lot. So it was difficult because those were all things that Islam now suddenly told me that I couldn't do. The concept of getting up before dawn to pray, you know, was just, whoa. I used to sleep till like 12 o'clock in the afternoon and get up and, you know, really take my time with life. And that was really the hard bit. It was really just trying to not be so selfish about life anymore and really look at, you know, what I need to do to be a benefit to my family, a benefit to my community, and a benefit to the world.
Mohammed Foulds was living in Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of Islam, when, after rejecting both Christianity and atheism, his life changed beyond recognition.
I was working at the Saudi Arabian Wildlife Department, studying, which I think are amazing birds, vultures. So I was 8,000 feet up with the clouds below me. And at that point, they told me that my life could be at risk because I was in suspected Al-Qaeda, you know, territory. And, you know, the government officers had to come with me. We had to get clearance from the police and the mayor. They said to me, maybe you ought to go back to London. And I said, no, I know you people. I feel safe. And then I began to hear the call of the prayer. It used to echo through the actual mountains. I just used to lie there and cry, and I had no idea what it meant and what he was saying, but his voice was so beautiful. I just kept saying, well, you know, keep going. I'm not sure what you're trying to say, but keep going.
it was a chance encounter with a local that provided the answers.
And I was due to fly back to London, and 2 Americans were just shot dead just down the road from me. And I'd never met this person before, and he gives me a Quran, and he says, you know, can we go for a ride? And I just trusted him, and he drove me towards the Yemen border, which I'm panicking now. And it's pitch dark at night time, and asked me questions about my life. Anyway, after about an hour, he drove me back, and he just said, before you leave tomorrow, would you come to the mosque? And I've never been to a mosque. I went in there, he just said, just do what I do and follow me, and I just watched him, and straight after, he just turned to me after and said, do you want to become Muslim? And there was no, it was just like this, I couldn't resist. I just said yes.
By taking the Prophet's name, our Mohammeds have a big reputation to live up to. The name means the praised one. And for Muslims, this 7th century figure was sent to perfect human character. But what precisely is his appeal to British Muslims?
One of the things that the Quran says about the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, is that he's a mercy to mankind. He's here, he was sent for all humanity, yeah, with the values that all humanity can identify with, you know, and for me that was profound. It was beautiful in that the person didn't have to be a Muslim. It just things that people share in common that helps to elevate people.
For me, one of the greatest love stories about Islam is the marriage of the Prophet to his first wife. When the Prophet Muhammad received his revelation from God telling him to declare that he was a prophet, the first person that he met after that was his wife Khadija. And when he was thrown out of Mecca for preaching these very radical ideas of equality, she went with him, and they lived in poverty, even though she had been the queen of the Arabs. She'd been one of the richest women there. And he says that it was her that helped him get through that time. And that, for me, means that he recognizes that women are a fundamental part of Muslim society and need to be right at the very front of it, but we don't see that happening, and I find that really sad.
I just thought this is the ideal human being. He's got ethics, he's got morals, he stands for justice, looks after the weak, looks after animals, looks after the poor. You know, everything was there for me in terms of this was a complete man, and I decided that if this was a Muslim, then I wanted to be a Muslim.
For Muslims, the Prophet is a source of daily inspiration. But the reality is that in Britain, where being a Muslim means being a minority, it's not always easy to live up to the name Muhammad.
I would describe myself as a confusist. I'm a Muslim, but I'm a confused Muslim. This is the conflict. On one hand, I'm a good Western boy, you know, ticking all the boxes. On the other hand, I'm trying to be a good Muslim boy, ticking the boxes. And on the other hand, I have these Bengali values too. I feel that I live in 3 universes because I have a professional life. And I'm completely different, even the way I speak. And then, for example, I have a kind of a friends and social life with an Asian group, for example, and I'm completely different there. And then I go straightly back in time to Bangladesh when I step into the home. So it's having to juggle 3 me's every single day.
And it's not only Ruhel Mohammed whose friends and family have different expectations of him. For Martin Foles, taking the name Mohammed has created problems with some of his family.
I've got one brother, unfortunately, who has found it difficult. We haven't seen each other for a number of years, and I think he's found it very hard to actually meet me and my wife and daughter. And he hasn't yet met me, although I've tried to meet him, you know. So that's a sad thing. You know, he knows I'm a Muslim, but perhaps one day, God willing, that we will meet, and he will still see I'm a human being. I'm still his brother. You know, I'm no different. If he's out there, if he's watching this, you know, I hope that he can find it in his heart at least say hi.
Some are put off by the name. Others find it difficult to see beyond appearances.
I think a lot of people will look at the way that I dress and will think that I've been forced to believe in somehow kind of backward ideology. And I think as soon as I start speaking, people are a little bit confused because I was born and brought up in Britain. I sound like sort of North London suburban girl. And we just wish people would listen to what we have to say rather than what others say about us.
But far from getting easier, the difficulties of being a Muslim in Britain have only got worse. The events of 7/7 and the fear of a new generation of homegrown terrorists has changed the way Muslims are perceived. What's it like for our Mohammeds to live with the perception that they are terrorists?
It's a challenge to be a Muslim in this time and age. Post July 7th, with the underground bombings in central London and the bus bombings, the increase of Islamophobic attacks as well as stop and search has affected people like me. I mean, in 1 week I was stopped a minimum of 5 to 7 times, travelling to and from work in the underground, just because I look like a Muslim. I have a cap on, I've got a beard, and I carry a rucksack due to my work. People assume that because I'm a Muslim, I'm less British than others. That's absolutely untrue. It's quite the opposite. I'm an ardent Liverpool supporter. I like a laugh. I like to interact and mix with people. And I have fish and chips on a regular basis.
I remember very clearly the morning of July 7th because I was due to get married about a month later. And I was speaking to my fiancé on the phone, and he was a little bit upset because the trains had been running late and he'd missed a really important meeting at work. And a few minutes later, the news about the bombings came up, and we reviewed his journey into work, and we realised that if he had been on his usual train, he could well have been part of that bombing. And yet I was also the victim of the fact that people thought that I was a terrorist. And I felt at the end of a double whammy of this prejudice.
And for one of our Mohammeds, the apprehension around his name has made it a lot tougher for him to live out his dream.
My name is Mohammed. I'm 39 years old. I am a pilot. 8 years old, I think I knew exactly what I wanted to do in life. I was fascinated by aeroplanes, and that's all I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be a pilot.
After 10 years flying experience, including in America, an unexpected event got in the way.
After the events of 9/11, having a name Mohammed and being a pilot did not mix very well. I think my earliest experience of the name Mohammed after 9/11 was I was working at Stansted Airport. Part of the familiarization of the airport was a visit to the police station at Stansted. We just happened to be standing there, and behind us was a big poster with the 20 most wanted. And after 9/11, all 20 were Al-Qaeda suspects. And the name Mohammed featured in pretty much 60% of all the names there. One of the guys, he looked at the board and he said to me, "Your name is Mohammed, isn't it?" I was like, "Yes, it is." And he was like, "Well, look, your name features so many times on that poster. We should give you a nickname." I was like, "Okay, go ahead." He said, "I know what, we'll start calling you Bomber from now on." And that was shocking for me.
After 9/11, Mohammed found it increasingly difficult to find a job flying passengers. The solution played on his conscience.
I did struggle with it, that the name Mohammed, it was the Prophet's name. And why should I be abbreviating such a beautiful name? I think even a few members of my family said, "Oh, you shouldn't abbreviate a name some more, but I still did. And I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I'm still Mohammed. It's just that people call me Mo.
And Captain Mo is not the only one whose name causes him some serious problems.
Well, the most difficult thing about being a Muslim is being a Muslim. Is the perception out there. Sometimes you travel in airlines and suddenly you see 3 or 4 people picked up, and all of them, they look Muslims. And they call it random check. So until I said I'm going to change my name from Muhammad Ali to random check.
Muhammad Ali Harath is often stopped by the authorities, considered a wanted man by his home country, Tunisia. He's been on an Interpol red notice since 1992 for alleged criminal activities. He sought political asylum in Britain in 1995, but as a student in Tunisia, he opposed what he called a one-party state and claims to have suffered for his actions.
Well, I was unlucky enough to be arrested many times, tortured, put in jail, to the extent I don't know the night and the day. I don't know the hours. I lost control of my life. I've seen friends of mine, dear friends of mine, I can't forget them at all, who died under the torture. But I'm not a terrorist. But if I'm terrorizing someone, I hope I can terrorize tyrannies and dictators. Opposing dictators, opposing tyrannies is an act of worship to me.
Whether they like it or not, British Muslims are also part of an international brotherhood of faith. And more Muslims worldwide are pigeonholed as either moderate or extremist. Worse still, many British Muslims feel that fringe groups like recently banned Islam for UK are hijacking their faith.
A lot of young people are frustrated and angry when they see in the news what's happening in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Palestine. This frustration and anger sometimes can lead young Muslims towards an extremist and a rejectionist kind of pathway. I mean, Islam for UK is an offshoot of Al-Muhajirun, and they've been around for a very long time. When we were at college and we've debated them, we've discussed with them. They're a very, very small minority group whose opinions and views are rejected by the overwhelming majority of Muslims in the UK and internationally. I don't think it would work if we start banning organizations and restricting their freedoms, because that is just a reason for them to be more entrenched in their extremism.
In light of recent reports, you might be forgiven for thinking that those with extreme views are a significant proportion of the British Muslim population. Men such as part-time telesales worker Mohammed Shah Jahan. He is a former member of Islam for UK, recently banned under the Terrorism Act.
My name is Mohammed Shah Jahan. I'm 25 years old and I come from Stoke-on-Trent. Many people have called myself a radical, a fundamentalist, maybe a terrorist even sometimes. But if they say that I'm a terrorist because I'm calling for my faith, then fair enough. It doesn't mean nothing to me, because if anything, it shows that I'm on the footstep of the Prophet Muhammad, because he was called a terrorist, a fundamentalist as well. So I'm happy if they're going to call me these names.
It was the events of 9/11 that changed his life forever.
In our local area, there was a lot of debates happening at that time. There was loads of groups arising, Islamic groups, and there was loads of discussions about, which group is the right group. So I was getting pulled from the left to right, to tell you the truth. And I met an individual who knew a lot about Islam. His knowledge was very vast, so I thought I'll just block everybody else out. I'll go to him and I'll study for at least 6 months with him, which I did. He used to tell us what Muhammad, peace be upon him, did, how he struggled in his lifetime in a society, how he was ostracized, etc. People hated him, quite a lot of people hated him and wanted to kill him, in fact. And these things were never preached or never taught to us by anybody, not even the imams. They never tell you about these things. But when it came to this individual telling us these things, it was a shock. We believe to strive for Sharia in UK, and we believe it will be implemented in UK one day, because it's a prophecy of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. When it does get implemented in UK, it does mean the cut in the hand of the thief, it does mean the stoning of the adulterer, man or woman, if they're found guilty, and it does mean the closing of pubs, alcohol would not be allowed publicly, and obviously the billboards, nudity, pornography, interest, all this will be banned.
Muhammad's views and interpretations of Sharia law are not shared by most of his fellow Muslims.
Whether people join us, accept us, hate us, it doesn't bother me, as long as I'm doing what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did.
But whilst those with radical views grab a disproportionate amount of the media spotlight, men like Mohammed Shah Jahan make up a tiny fraction of Britain's Muslims. Most prefer to stress Islam's message of peace.
The Prophet said to his companions, "You will not enter paradise until you love God, and you will not love God until you love one another." And then he asked them, "Shall I tell you what you should do in order to love one another?" And he said, "Spread salam," which means peace. Literally it means peace. So here is the kind of key to paradise, which is to spread peace and security and safety amongst yourselves.
The worst thing we can do is to demonize Muslims, 1 billion people in the world, based on the actions of 10, 15 or 20 people. We don't do that with other groups of people. We don't do it with Christians. We don't do it with other religions or other races. I don't think we should do it with Muslims, because at the end of the day, we live in a world where those relationships exist. This is not a cluster of civilizations. It's about living together. And if I need to say that, I'll keep saying it as many times as I need to.
Half of Britain's Muslims were born in this country. Others have lived here for most of their lives. And despite the increasing popularity of the name Muhammad, many are still living with a label of prejudice and suspicion. Whichever way they spell their name, all want the freedom to simply be Muhammad.
The best thing about being a Muslim is to be part of this global community, this ummah. We all share the same direction of prayer. We share the same spirit of charity and kindness and generosity, and that's an immensely empowering thing for me.
How I am now is probably the best state that I would want to be in my whole entire life. And how I was before, I pray to God that He forgives me for that, and I pray to God that I always stay the way I am now, inshallah.
But I'm still nothing. I'm still trying to become a good human being. And that's the key thing that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said. The most important thing is to become a good human being.
I think what the Prophet said, when that person asked the Prophet, what do I need to do to be a good Muslim? And the Prophet said, to be honest. That really opened my eyes, that for me, to be anything, start with honesty. Sounds silly, but it's a real powerful thing for me.
Would I ever give up the name Muhammad? Let me think about that. No.